Yes, tomorrow, we be formally, tomorrow.
It says recording on progress.
See?
All right, so this meeting is being recorded by the. Okay. So you have, two tenants right now that are doing it on the Zoom, so they're gonna listen into.
Yeah.
Jenny and Michelle,
So, Matthew,
yes.
Jenny Cruz,
Jenny, is your last name Cruz?
Yes.
that's the treasurer.
Yeah, so they're on Zoom.
All right.
Yeah, that way, you know, folks are still connected.
Okay,
And I'm not comfortable, I have a lot of autoimmune diseases, so I actually ask everyone to wear a mask. Because even though with the vaccines, my doctor feels I'm at high risk. So I know a lot of people feel the same way, where our community has a lot of health challenges. So we wanted to make sure that we could put Zoom as an option.
It's recording, awesome. If they technologically, whatever.
Yeah, I feel like we've come a long way since we started.
We like, you gotta be careful with that, don't be too close because they're interference.
Oh, so let me move it down.
It's gonna interfere with Huh?
Yeah, so Cassandra had posters. So we have posters with the Zoom info in case people couldn't make it. So
on PSS.
what's PSS?
Oh, that's a senior.
No, so I made enough copies for every building.
Oh.
Yeah, so each building had 2 papers put up. But I tell people, you know, I've had teach-ins with only 2 people, and they've been great. The information is still of value, and folks still, you know, decide that it was important for them to be there. So I'll do a teach-in for 1 person if I have to. It's just about.
They don't believe it.
You'll see after the class, you'll believe it. Because we have receipts. So this whole night is about educating and empowering tenants to make decisions for themselves. We don't tell you what to do. We give you information and give you options. And then we always do, like Cesar and I are the 2 leaders. So I'll start. So my name is Ramona. And if someone joins that speaks Spanish only, just let us know and we can go back and forth. So Cesar and I both live in public housing. He lives at Melrose houses, I live in Mitchell houses. We both are really passionate about public housing, about NYCHA, because we're the product of NYCHA. So we both graduated college, got our masters. Cesar is an urban planner, and he looks at how racism affects how cities are actually planned. And he tries to do things to stop that. I have my own business, which includes being of service to the community. It's a social enterprise. So sometimes you'll hear like a company that donates, if they sell 1 shoe, they'll donate 1 shoe. In my company, it's called Ojalá Threads. It's based down in Mitchell houses. And what I do is I dedicate my time because I have a past working on policy. So I work for the FBI and the Department of Defense, working on community development, outreach, and partnerships. So I have illnesses like I shared with you guys. I like to be transparent. And that's why I had to stop working. But my brain still thinks the same way that I used to think before. So I use all of the skills that I had now to fight for criminal justice reform. So I'm part of the Close Rikers campaign. I sit on the board for Mont Haven for that. I also work on public transportation. So you guys heard that I got here late. So I worked on the half price Metro card campaign. That was the biggest one that I was a part of. And then I decided to get involved in housing because my grandmother lived at Metro houses for like 36 years. She passed away in December due to COVID. And at that time, I took a break. But by the spring, Cesar and I decided that we needed to do something more organized. So we created Safe Section 9. So the first question I always get is, what is Section 9? Do you guys know what Section 9 is?
No.
Okay, so Section 9 is public housing. The way that Congress created public housing is they gave it a section because they wanted to write all of the laws about it. So our landlord, our owner, is actually Congress. And that's something that I want you guys to keep in mind when we start talking about funding, when we start talking about racism in policy, and when we start looking at what we want to do. So Section 9 for its first like 40 years, right, Cesar? It really supported white communities. When Section 9 was built, it was built because of the Great Depression. So the government at that time said to itself, we have all these veterans coming back from war. We want to make sure that they have a good place to live, that's safe, that there is money to support them. When people started moving out of the slums in the Lower East Side, where the idea of public housing became necessary, all of those people were coming in from Europe, right? So they're coming in from Europe, they're coming in from different places, and they weren't American. So to become American, Congress said, we need to give funding in addition to housing, because they recognize that when you have people that face a lot of challenges like language, education, customs, culture, not being the same as the community that they join, you have to help them become a part of that community. Did you guys know about that?
Mm-mm.
So Congress said, if we want these people to be a part of America and to make America better, they have to have housing, one, and two, they have to have resources. So this is why back in the days, we had after-school parties. Well, we had trips. We had daycare centers that were run by NYCHA. We had, I know at Mitchell Houses, they had skate parties. How long have you been at Melrose? 44 years. What things do you remember used to happen before that don't happen anymore?
Can't remember.
You can't remember? Yeah, that's, what about you guys? That's sad. Do you remember any activities like that happening?
There was a lot happening back in the day, so.
Yeah.
What do you remember, Cassandra?
Well, I've been there, like, I tried to my age, like 50 years I've been over here.
And you were a child when your family moved here?
Yeah.
Okay, how old were you when you moved in?
I ain't tell my age, now.
Bruh.
I was a kid going across the street, right?
So when you were a kid and you moved into Melrose Houses, what was it like?
It was great.
It was.
It was nice and clean.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it was clean over there. People were friendly, it was friendly, but it was decent. It was not really dirt around, trash, dogs, things. Garbage, rats, dogs. That dog, never.
And did they have any activities that you remember, like going to daycare, after school? She's always getting all these phone calls.
We used to come to this center where we had after school, we had, they helped us with our homework. We had double dutch. They gave us lunch, we had snacks after school. We had a pool room. Back here, we used to.
So it was like a latchkey kids program, right? Latchkey kids is what they used to call it outside of public housing, which is once the kids came out of school, the parents were working, so they created a safe space for the kids to go to. So grandma moved into public housing at a time when I was still living in Washington Heights with my mom. But I would come down to the South Bronx and I would see all these different activities were always going on. And she was in the senior center every day, knitting, crocheting, painting, going on trips. And I'm like, yo, you live in the life. Things really started to change like 15 years ago, right? It's when I started noticing, I was gone for about a decade. So I went to grad school in Hawaii because I like to be tanned all the time. So I'm out there and grandma would call me and I'd be at my job and she'd be like, I have this huge leak in my apartment. I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, I've been mopping up water for hours and I can't get the water to stop. And I'm calling the management office and nobody will come. And I'm like, okay, there's a 6-hour time difference. So my morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, it was already midday for her. And she's like, I've been mopping water since 8 o'clock this morning. And I was like, what is happening? So that was the first hint that I got that something was wrong. So I started working with public housing and Cesar and I started researching, like where did the money go? And why did it go somewhere else? And who's getting it? Because who pays for everything that Congress does? Where does that money come from? Taxpayers.
Right.
She gets the first gift of the night. So she gets the first gift of tonight.
Get the answer?
If you get the answer, you get a gift. So taxpayers are the ones that pay for everything that Congress does. So if you're retired, you might not be getting taxes taken out of your Social Security check, but you pay taxes when you go to the store. You pay taxes as part of your yearly returns. they deduct some money out of your social security too, go ahead.
I was told that taxes does come out of your social security check, because it's a check.
So there's like different programs, depending on whether or not you're in social security or SSI, that will affect whether or not they're taking taxes. But everyone in America pays taxes. Your 4-year-old might not think that they don't pay taxes, but when he wants something from the store that's not a piece of clothing in New York City, he's paying taxes. So all of our collective money is supposed to be used for things that benefit us. Now, when public housing started changing, it wasn't because we stopped paying taxes. It's because white people moved out. And that's the truth, right?
Yes.
The minute that they started leaving, Congress said, you know what? Now that we have to let Black and brown people live here, because we had to sue. Do you guys know that we sued public housing so that Black and brown people could move in anywhere?
Wow.
So at first, it was only for white families. You had to have a husband. You weren't allowed to be a single mother.
Right.
You needed to have a husband. You were white, and they helped you get employment. They helped you join a union. They put you towards trades. They supported these families.
Yeah.
Now, when the white people started leaving, they started leaving because when you are only paying 30% of your money towards your rent, you can save money. It's the only way that the American dream works. And for me, when I went to the FBI, my mentor there, white guy, super white. We make fun of how white he is. Like he wears these polyester suits, and I love Joe. Joe's hella Catholic. He's super conservative. I've actually made him radical. I've kind of put the fire under him. So now he's like writing emails to like the bishops saying, I don't like what you just did. And he thinks that that's fierce. And I'm like, keep getting more fierce. So Joe said to me, Ramona, he knew my family history. When I got into the FBI, I started as an intern. I have 7 brothers. At the time, I think 4 of them had criminal records. I didn't. I always had a job, I always went to school, I never broke the rules. I joke with Cesar that we were always the nerds in our community, right? We were like the ones that wanted to be cool, but we're like, nah, we're really not that cool. We're just kind of accepted as like the nerds on the projects.
I tried
So
basketball.
when I started working, I said to him, oh my God, this is how much I'm getting paid. And he said, do you know about the 4-week rule? And I'm like, what 4-week rule? And he's like, the way that you're gonna do things to make sure that you don't misspend your money, and he's very Catholic and I was raised Catholic. He said to me the following, he said, 1 week needs to go towards your rent. If you are ever renting an apartment that you can't pay for with 1 week of your salary, you're living out of your means.
Yeah.
So your rent and your mortgage has to come out of that 1 week.
That's right.
All the other interns ended up renting in this high rise, it was fancy, it was all this stuff. I said, I got $700 a month, what can I get? I rented a room in somebody's house in Virginia. Other week goes to all of your utilities. Your phone, your gas, your electric, the maintenance, if you like to do your shoes and have them wax and shiny all the time. That goes to those things. 1 week now is supposed to go towards your savings. The 4th week, from there, you have your emergency money, and if you tithe, that's where your tithe comes from. So he taught me that, and I was like, what? I had never heard of this. And I'd like to share this with a lot of kids in our community because our community doesn't know this. So when Congress started thinking about how do we charge rents to make sure that people have upward mobility, that they can save and become stronger and leave public housing, that's why they chose 30%. And it's important for us to understand that because this means that they always had the intention of people moving on. But that hasn't been happening. It's not happening because of the way that the funding is being used. So Section 9 starts out great. I'm gonna summarize it over. So it starts out great. We have all these different families that are becoming upward mobile, are becoming middle class, and are moving on to different communities, right? So now they can buy houses. Now they can get out of an apartment. When we start moving in, and remember we had to sue to be able to live in public housing First, blacks were allowed, and then Latinos. So after they let us in, at the same time, a lot of Congress people, out of pure racism, said, we need to stop putting money into this program. Because look at these slums. And this is like 1965, 1970. The Republicans are getting itchy. Carter's in office. Reagan's about to take office. And Reagan starts talking about a welfare queen. You guys heard of the welfare queen?
Yeah.
What is a welfare queen? Right here on the left side. What's a welfare queen? Do you know?
Program. It's like a WIC program.
Somebody get on welfare anyway.
That's a part of it. What else is the description of a welfare queen?
Most likely, majority of the time is when there's a female, without a father, a male figure in the household,
Mhm.
yet they rely on public assistance in order to stay afloat.
And what race is the welfare queen?
African
American.
That's right. And that's the important part. Because a lot of people will come out and talk to you about public housing, and they don't want to tell you the welfare queen is Black. And in this room, who's here?
Black.
It's 5 Black women, right? So when public housing started then serving women who were single, head of households with no partner on record, with children that needed public assistance to get by, then Reagan started saying, this is why we gotta kill this program. This is why we gotta get rid of it. Because this program, what we're doing is we're helping all these Black women just have more babies and take more money. But Reagan never talked about the war on drugs. He never talked about the fact that Black men were being incarcerated at a bigger rate.
His wife, when she brought out the, that phrase.
Say no to drugs.
Yeah.
I think she was guilty. Like, I think she had a real tough time sleeping because of the things that Reagan did. So she tried to make amends by creating the war on drugs, right? So Reagan starts traveling the country, telling all of his white donors, when I get into office, we're getting rid of all these programs. No more food stamps, no more public housing, no more this, no more that. Because we're not gonna have people that are just gonna mooch off of us. Because you know they love to say you gotta pull your bootstraps up. And he's going around saying that. So when he takes office, you actually see a trend where funding, we have a chart and a video that we made, and you see that funding has steadily been kept maintained for public housing to make sure that it doesn't fall apart. All of a sudden, when the welfare queen becomes a part of America's discussion on public housing, funding goes down. So it was racism that caused that decision. So since then, they've been using every single mechanism that they can. Every path that they find, they want to use it in order to get rid of public housing. The first thing that they started to do was giving more money to Section 8. Now, traditional Section 8 works where you get called, back in the days, my mom got a phone call, you got a Section 8 voucher. And you took that voucher, and Cesar has a Section 8 voucher, and now he's walking around the community, knocking on doors, saying, hey, do you take Section 8? But how does Section 8 calculate your rent?
They take the highest, they pay the highest rent and you pay the smallest rent.
So Section 8 doesn't lock your rent to 30%. Because what Section 8 does, it says, this is how much money we're willing to pay for an apartment. We'll pay all of this and you pay a small part of it. But who's paying that big amount? Where's that money coming from? We talked about it earlier. From your taxpayers, right? So landlords said, oh, this is nice. I can have all these broke people move into my property. The government is gonna pay me a shitload of money. And this person is gonna pay $96 a month or whatever my mom used to pay. And it's magic, the money's just appearing. No, this was our money. So that money, that waste that started happening, because what managers do when they're a private landlord, they have these big organizations. And these organizations are national. And one of them, Gregg Russ, who's the chair of NYCHA, he's a member of it. So they get together and they say, how can we make sure that we're getting all the money we possibly can out of the government? Now, they use different words, but ain't nobody got time to like make things pretty. So they sit there and they say, I wanna make sure that we get the most amount of money that we can. So they make the rent higher, so that the government has to cover a bigger percentage. Because my brother had health issues, I had health issues. My mom couldn't hold down a full-time job at one point. And I remember we had a 3-bedroom apartment. She paid $96 a month. And I used to sit there every month and be like, where is that $1,000 extra dollars coming from? It used to boggle me, because I'd be like, these people must be so nice that they're willing to pay all this money. In my innocence, I didn't realize that our landlord was charging way more than he should have, because we were getting a voucher and the government just wanted to give my mom a house. They weren't gonna negotiate a lease. They're just like, you get the apartment and tell me how much it is. I know people that have gotten Section 8 back in the days, and they would sign the contract and Section 8 would pay, let's say 1,000, and they would be paying 200. And then they'd be paying extra money on the side to the landlord. We all know stories like that, right? So Section 8 really became the depository for all the private landlords to go in and say, this is where we can get our money from. It's a slush fund, and it's being slushed by our tax money, right? So time passes, and they realize public housing has been getting starved, right? So slowly, who's the owner of public housing? We talked about that earlier. Who owns us? Congress. So Congress, in like 1965, stops taking care of public housing. By 1980, they're like, damn, you see that? Look at that slum. Look at that ghetto. Look at all this public housing making the cities look horrible. So they go after the big cities. They go after New York and Chicago, and like Compton and LA. Chicago, they exploded their public housing buildings. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
You remember that video? How did you feel when you saw that video?
Jersey, too. I mean, they took them all down. I think they went up to 20 something.
Yeah,
floors and all that
huge
kind of
towers.
stuff.
And how did you feel when you saw that video?
Oh, devastated. Because that could have been a part of me, my family, in
Yes.
that situation.
They did that in the South. Like
Yes.
Louisiana,
Yep.
they did that. They
In
took
New
a
Orleans?
wrecking-
Yeah.
They took a wrecking ball and they knocked it down and they said, rebuilding small housing for people who work and give back to the community. And they showed it, couple of years later, people, and it was beautiful.
So they first went in and they destroyed all the big towers, right? And that happened in New Orleans, it happened in Newark, it happened in Chicago. So it's gotten to the point in 1980 where they're like, now we gotta do something, because now we have these buildings falling apart. Because if you don't give maintenance to anything, your car, your elevator, your hair, if I don't wash my hair about 2 times a week, I'm gonna have a problem. So if you abandon public housing the way that Congress did, after 15 years, it became visible that something was wrong. And it was deteriorating, right? So let's speed up to Obama, because he is the chosen one according to many people. So by the time Obama gets to DC, Obama has this guy working for him. And he actually ran for mayor here in New York City during the last election, Sean Donovan. Sean Donovan actually did the same exact kind of work that I did for the government. He did it for Obama. And it's this thing that's called private-public partnerships. When I got that job, I didn't know what the hell it meant. I literally found my job on Craigslist. I was a grad student looking for work, and I was on Craigslist in Hawaii, and I was like, I need to get a job because my rent was still $700 a month, and I could not pay it anymore. And I said, what the hell is a private-public partnership? And I wrote a resume, and this man hired me. I went to a clearance process, I did all this thing, got the job. I walked in, had no fucking idea what I was supposed to do. So what is private-public partnerships? It's when you are a private individual or a company, and you decide, I want to become a partner with this. Let's make believe that this is a school. So let's make believe that I'm Amazon. And I'm not very popular right now. So Amazon says, you know what, I'm gonna join up with this school, and I'm gonna give this school a ton of money for computers. And I'm gonna give them air conditioners. And now we're in a partnership. And that is exactly what they started doing with public housing. Now, the way that it got corrupted and that it went wrong is that they said, well, we have two accounts, right? Let's make believe Congress has two bank accounts. One bank account goes to Section 8. One bank account comes to Section 9. The racism that we've talked about, the welfare claim, the history of these things, there were still so many Republicans in charge of Congress and of the Senate that they were like, hell no, we're not giving any money to Section 9. Because that's for Black and brown people. And Section 9 tends to be in big cities. And these racist guys, because they're mostly men, they're like Milwaukee. They don't give a shit about people in the Bronx. So they're like, we're not sending money to this account. We're gonna send it to Section 8. So then the question was, how do you get it to Section 8? And then use it against public housing? And that's when they started inventing programs like the Blueprint and RAD and PACT. So we have this little handout about the Blueprint. And let me get the rest. This explains to you the basics of the program. So the Blueprint program, what it basically says, and it took us months to understand this, because the way that NYCHA wrote it, it was on purpose to make it difficult.
Sure did.
So they wrote this thing and they mailed all of us packages in our houses that said, here's the blueprint for change. And I know everybody looked at it and was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And 30 minutes later, it was in the trash.
It's so true.
So Cesar, I, and a group of other people, we've been working on this since last August. And here's what the blueprint is. It is Congress issuing money to this account that goes to Section 8 to turn that money into what's called a tenant protection voucher. And now I like to dig into that name. When I say tenant protection voucher, what does that make you think? Protect you from what? Because that's the intent, but what are you being protected from? If you are in an apartment that's falling apart, that's when you become eligible for the tenant protection voucher. It's protecting you from your home.
So of course, there's different set of floors that's actually included in order for you to understand it, you gotta read it.
Yeah. But let that sink in for a minute, because when I finally figured that out, it hurt me. I felt devastated, like she said. Basically, since 1965, Congress has been a slumlord. Congress is the biggest slumlord in America, probably in the world, because no one else has this much public housing. So they let us get to the point where some of our homes don't have boilers that work, elevators that work. Our kitchens are a disaster. There's rats eating away at our walls. There's roaches everywhere. So the reason why the thing is called the tenant protection voucher is because it's protecting you. And this is the funny thing to me, right? It's so ironic that Congress let this happen for 40 years and then turns around and says, I'm so sorry. Let me protect you from your house. But the only way that they're willing to protect you is if they can sell off your unit. So back to the blueprint, right? So the blueprint is we're putting money into this account, which is Section 8. Now, the tenant protection vouchers get issued out of this account. And it's a voucher very similar to the Section 8 voucher that I explained earlier. This is the difference though. Let's say that this chair is my apartment 17F. And I live here, and a tenant protection voucher is issued. This tenant protection voucher, which is coming from Section 8 money, doesn't belong to me. It's not issued to Ramona. It's issued to apartment 17F. And that's how they get you. Because now your apartment is getting 70% of that money covered, not you. So if I have to move from my apartment, I can't take this voucher. See that? It stays with the apartment. So if I transfer somewhere else, I have to ask permission to see if someone else has that kind of funding for me to apply over there for it. Because this apartment will forever now have, it's 100-year lease what they're giving.
Yeah.
So for 100 years, this apartment is gonna have that Section 8 voucher, that's a tenant protection voucher. Does that make sense? Because remember, it took us months to figure this out.
So what you saying, with that voucher, right, itself, is covering that apartment, but just that apartment in regards to, let's say, best stones.
Yes.
Just maintenance.
And that's a really good point,
Just
of
that
just this apartment. Because let's say that this is your building. So my apartment is a part of this building. But when the vouchers get issued, every apartment in this building, that's why I was asking how many buildings you have, how many floors, how many apartments per floor? Because I want you guys to visualize this. Because this building will now have a ton of apartments with vouchers dedicated to each apartment. But let's say like Betances, right? Betances house is down the road.
Yeah.
They decided to go with this program. They said, we need to do something, we can't do with this building anymore. I want out of public housing. So Wavecrest manager came in.
Woo.
Now Wavecrest is a slumlord.
Yes, they are.
They love to evict people. They love not to do the repairs. They love to evict, threaten people with eviction, take people to court. And this has been seen in Brooklyn and Queens where they really have a lot of units. So Wavecrest came into Betances and said, okay, we're gonna take over, we're gonna make your dreams come true. And they did for like 6 months. People started getting new floors. I don't have tiles on my floor, so I mean, I'm not gonna punch a baby for it, but I could do some drastic stuff to get some flooring at this point, because I've been waiting like a year for tiles. So I'm on the lead floor that used to be here before. I'm on the original lead tiles. That's what I'm living on right now.
Yeah.
So they came in and they said to them, yeah, we're gonna give you these tiles. We're gonna paint. How many of you haven't had paint in 2 years? When was the last time you had paint?
And the paint that they're giving now, and
It's horrible.
Yeah.
But how long ago did they paint your apartment?
2019.
And how long ago did they paint yours?
no, it was like 15.
15 years ago?
Yeah.
Our apartment, grandma's apartment, 10 years. We had not seen paint. Because we've had a leak in our roof for 10 years. Well, not more. I need to stop saying 10. So they're like, we can't paint your apartment. So Wavecrest, they get to Betances, right? Let's go back to that example, because I want everyone to visualize it. They come in and Wavecrest says, all right, I'm gonna use the money that comes in through this tenant protection voucher, and I'm gonna fix your units. One day, a leak starts in the bathroom, no, in the kitchen. And one of the tenants is like, there's water coming out of my sink. It's not going down the sink. So it's somebody's doing laundry and they realize something happened with the pipe and it's a huge issue. So she calls NYCHA. Now remember, her manager is now Wavecrest, right? They took this plan. She calls NYCHA and she says, hey, I'm calling you from 190 Betances Way. I'm sorry, we can't find you in the system. You live in NYCHA? She's like, yeah, I live in NYCHA. They're like, well, what's your address? 190 Betances Way. And they're like, but you guys went private. You're not a part of NYCHA anymore. She says, okay, so who do I call about this leak? You gotta call Wavecrest. Okay, what did your neighbor say earlier? Wavecrest is only getting money for your apartment, not for your building. So Wavecrest said to her, so we don't have responsibility over piping, because we only get money to take care of your apartment. So NYCHA has to fix that piping. So she calls NYCHA back. She says, I have water coming out of my sink. What's your address? 190 Betances. Well, you're not a part of NYCHA. You need to call Wavecrest. And I don't know how they got the water to stop, but they still haven't gotten their pipes replaced. And when they had elevator issues, they started calling NYCHA. And NYCHA's like, call Wavecrest. And Wavecrest is like, no, call NYCHA. So the way that these programs were made by Obama and by Sean Donovan is that the tenant is erased, right? In section 8, you would get a voucher with your name on it. You would be the person that held this voucher, and you could move from state to state, you could transfer from apartment to apartment. That was traditional section 8. What they're trying to sell us with the blueprint is not that. It takes away all of your rights. It takes your name off all of the important documents. And suddenly it makes it like if your apartment is a person. Because what they care about is the money that they're getting for this apartment. Now the blueprint is even bolder. So all of this happens in the blueprint, but here's the real sexy piece. The money that they get every month, let's say that this apartment is $1,000 a month. You pay 30% of that. So you pay $300. So every month you're paying $300 and our taxes are paying $700. So as we're going month by month, there is $700 coming in taxpayer money into this unit, right? So that $700, do you know what NYCHA wants to do with that $700 under the blueprint?
Pocket.
Always. They always want to pocket it. But the way that they want to make money is they want to take those $700 and they went down to Wall Street and they talked to Bank of America, they talked to Chase, they talked to Brookfield, they talked to everybody that has money. And they said, if I guarantee you that Congress is going to issue a tenant protection voucher for $700, will you match these $700 for me and give me a loan for $700? Now, you guys know NYCHA really well. Do you think that NYCHA can pay off a loan responsibly?
No.
But this group of like rich white bankers is willing to lend them $700 every month for your apartment. Why do you think they're willing to do that?
Give us out. Because if you look at it from like when I was about to train coming from 60, you see the justification. How they always simulate and starting from all. So I would not be surprised if this one started in Bronx also.
So at Mitchell Houses, we are the final frontier to gentrification. There are more white people with iPhone 13s walking my neighborhood than seniors that I've grown up around. All the apartments being built below me are all luxury.
Yeah.
If you guys have time, take the BX32. I'll even meet you in front of the senior building. Take the BX32 to the last stop. Let me show you what's going on down there.
You know what the school over there was 23? All those buildings factories.
Yeah, they got rid of all of the jobs. So my mom used to work in one of those factories. My grandma used to work in one of those factories. They got rid of all of the jobs in our community, and now it's all luxury. So the reason why these bankers are comfortable lending NYCHA $700 for this apartment that's $1,000 is because one, they know NYCHA can't pay it. So that opens up the pathway for them getting our apartments. Because the way that you get evicted is, you're in this apartment, every month you're paying $300. Unbeknownst to you, NYCHA's not paying their part, right? They're falling behind on the debt that they're getting. Now, when you go to a bank and you take out a loan, you have to prove that you can pay the loan, right?
Yeah.
Somehow you have to have what's called collateral. And a lot of our community doesn't have collateral. So NYCHA is a slumlord, Congress is a slumlord. But somehow all these banks are like, yeah, let's give them all this money, let's lend it to them, go ahead. You wanna know why? Because the collateral for this loan that's gonna be $700 a month for this apartment every month is the deed to Melrose Houses, and it's the deed to each unit. So when NYCHA doesn't pay that loan, suddenly these private bankers that come from downtown are gonna start showing up in our development saying, I own this now. And they're gonna stand like this, because you know white guys like to do this. So they're all gonna take their suit, push it to the back, and do one of these and say, this is mine. Now, if a private developer or a private banker ends up getting our unit and then ends up getting each of our buildings, why would they want to keep poor Black and brown people who can only pay 30% a month? Do you think they're gonna keep us in there?
No, they're not.
So this is what's been happening in other cities and here in New York and Brooklyn and Queens. When people like Wavecrest come in, they will mess with you and they will slowly get you out of that apartment. And then when you get out of that apartment doesn't have to be low income anymore. It becomes market rate. I hate that word, market rate. Now, market rate is this stupid label for private people trying to make more money. Because who sets the market rate? The landlords. Who decides how much rent is gonna go up every year? You see the fights that they show on the news between people that rent stabilized and landlords. Who ends up winning most of the time? The landlords. So our landlords, these new private landlords, have no reason to keep us in here. Because our apartments are hella worthy. Don't be fooled by the fact that NYCHA doesn't take care of our properties. These units are gold. The land that we're on, Mitchell houses, I mean, I have now condos that are going for $2,000 for a studio. They sold units on 138th Street for $500,000. If Wavecrest comes in, they ain't gonna give a shit about Ramona. And on my limited income, where am I supposed to go? So now a lot of these Wavecrest, my mom has been on a list for like 7 years. We've been applying for her for like everything that comes out. Cassandra knows the only thing she could get into was something in Staten Island. So my mom commutes to Staten Island every day. Because she needs to be in her neighborhood. This is her neighborhood. So she's like, I'm gonna go crazy if I stay out there. So she comes here every single day, and that was the only apartment she could find. The other day I got an email from a company, and they were saying if my mother was interested in splitting an apartment with someone, they had units available immediately. My mother's 1 bedroom in this 2-bedroom apartment was going to be $1,100 for a bedroom. And she was gonna have to share the bathroom and the kitchen with a stranger. And these private developers are getting our taxpayer money. And they're doing this with it. Because you know right now there's a ton of apartments that are available in the city. They're just not for us. We just can't afford them, right? So that is the loophole. Do you guys understand? Now you don't need to know every detail, but I'm gonna give you guys homework. And the homework is gonna be that you're gonna have to share these papers with your neighbors. So I'm gonna ask each of you, because you said you have 14 apartments on each floor?
No, 10.
10?
Yes, 14
14
floors.
floors and 10 apartments. Okay, so I'm gonna ask each of you to take at least 10 copies of each paper. And when you knock the door, because I want you to actually knock, because you know when you leave something on our doors, we don't pick it up. I'll be coming home and I'll be like, that's not mine. I feel like it didn't fall off the front of my door. Sis, I move a little bit so she can, sorry. I couldn't see you either. So you're gonna take these papers, and the key things that you're gonna remember are that this plan is happening because Congress is a slumlord. And 2, that these private landlords don't have our best interest at heart. Okay, did you wanna say something?
What actually would the tenants be actually do to rebuttal? Or, to go against?
The fight?
Absolutely.
What do you guys think,
Because I know I'm guilty of contacting my brother president's office. I'm sure because I vote for you, I'm coming to your office.
Yeah, absolutely.
and that's an important attitude to have. Because a lot of our neighbors have become so afraid of rocking the boat.
Yeah.
And they're really thinking, like I tell my neighbors at Metro, I'm like, look, we have a petition, we have a rent strike, we're trying to go to DC in the spring. We need to man up and we need to roll out. And some of them are like, oh, but what if I get evicted? So a couple things that we're doing, right? We're doing all those activities. But you don't have to sign up for anything in any specific one. You can decide what action you want to take. The only thing that I ask of you tonight is that you start spreading the word. Because this group is pretty small, but if you all talk to 10 people, at the next meeting, because we'll be back, we don't just come once, we like to come back to each development. When we return, we should have double the people. Then after that, we should have triple the people. Because the more people get scared and they realize that we're about to be homeless if this happens, the more they're gonna do. So over the last 2 weeks, I have been losing my hair, losing my sleep, and like literally my stomach has not been functioning. Because there's been something on the news like every day that's called the Build Back Better plan.
Yes, ma'am.
Every day they're talking about this plan.
Was just on this one.
So Biden decided that he wanted to do everything that hasn't been done in America for the last 30 years. He's like, I'm gonna do it all. Which great, but it's not working, right? Because the first part of the plan was the infrastructure bill. So the infrastructure, they're saying that for New York, it's gonna bring money for the trains, for the buses, for our roads. It's gonna do all these things that we haven't been able to do before. The second part is this Build Back Better plan. So when you guys watch the news tonight, listen out for it. A lot of us in the spaces of organizing for public housing, a lot of folks don't like to go to DC. They don't like to target Congress. Cesar and I disagree with that because we know that Congress is our landlord. So you have to go to Congress. So the Build Back Better plan, we actually read the whole thing. So I had to read about 2,000 pages of policy. And the first thing I'll share with you about the Build Back Better plan is it's racist. So even in 2021, the way that Congress people are writing policy, they're still looking at us like if we're not worthy. And like if Black and brown people don't deserve to be supported. And they are actually, in some parts of the bill, it says, you know, these communities of Black and brown people, we need to mix them up because these are communities that don't function. It says it just like that. Go ahead.
My views, you know, as we have control of the House of Senate, you know, all three branches. You can tell that their racism still applies in the Congress, period, of course, because of white men.
Yeah, they run it.
Now, we got Manchin and Sinema, Manchin from West Virginia, and Sinema from Arizona. You're a Democrat.
Yeah. You're absolutely correct.
So from my view, you're actually a Republican wearing the sheep coat.
Yeah. And we have a lot of
The voters bill should pass, the George Floyd bill should pass, everyone's bill should.
all these things were being promised,
Exactly.
right? So she brings up a great point. We are now in control of both houses of government. And we said we need to go to DC and put some pressure on them because they are ignoring people from public housing. So when the first version of the bill came out, we were disappointed because they wanted to give public housing 80 billion. And we were gonna have to share that money with the whole country. Now, a lot of people like to act like there's no public housing anywhere else. Don't believe that lie. There are still 1.2 million Section 9 apartments across America. We only have 400,000. So there's a ton of people facing this same problem that we're facing, they're all facing. So in the first one, we were getting $80 billion. But I like to read, I like to read policies. Like, who likes to read policy? It's hard. But when I do something, I like to be really thorough. Because I was raised in a really strict household, so my mom is like, if you're gonna do it, you're gonna have to do it, right? Or don't do it at all. So I hear that voice still in my head. It's like, I have nightmares of it. So I started reading the bill and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna stop here because it doesn't talk about public housing. And then I would read a little bit and I'd be like, oh, but this is really bad for public housing. Because what they did was, they said, well, we don't have a lot of money, so we're only gonna give you 80 billion. Knowing that NYCHA alone needs about 120 billion to get back to where we were. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, but then why are you giving all this money to private landlords? And why are you giving all this money to privatizing public housing. And we started doing the math and we're like, all the money we need is being spent in the wrong places.
As always.
So this is the first time that we actually have a campaign that's focused on holding Congress accountable. For the second version of the bill, we're like, all right, so everybody got cut some money, America sucks, it sucks for everybody, I'm okay with that, right? Because if we're all gonna suffer, let's all suffer. But then I started reading the rest of the bill. Remember the tenant protection vouchers? What are the tenant protection vouchers used for again? To be issued to the apartment, right? So it's the tenant protection voucher is the one that's issued to your apartment, not to you, and it's Section 8 money. The first version of the bill, they were going to spend $500 million on tenant protection vouchers. Yeah, she's laughing because it's a joke. Guess how much money they put in the second version of the bill? Remember, everybody got cut, right? Because there's not enough money to feed children and give us daycare and let mothers be with their babies for 1 or 4 weeks. The second version of the bill, $1 billion. When I read the bill, tenant protection vouchers are the only thing that got an increase. What does that tell you guys?
That they don't care about us. They never did anything.
One, they don't give a shit about public housing. Two, they're not listening to us. Because we've been fighting the blueprint. Cassandra's been a part of this since August of 2019. That's more than a year. Every time that this legislation that gives these tenant protection vouchers goes up to Albany, we kill it. We've killed it 2 times. Go ahead, Cesar.
Also, NYCHA said they just stole the bill, the state bill. They just stole it a couple of times because they want to introduce it again in January because of all this pressure from tenants not to have the blueprint. So what they're saying is, okay, we're gonna let these tenants yell and everything, but we're gonna do everything in our power to pass it.
In January.
In January.
So this coming January, Gregg Russ, he's already contacting all of our elected officials. And he's telling them, we gotta get, we gotta get this passed. So who is your city council member? Is it Diana Ayala?
No, I think it's in Salamanca.
Is it Salamanca?
No.
His
I'll
name
be
is
able
like a little bit Italian.
I sent,
Yeah.
Raphael Sacamaro.
Rafael Salamanca?
Yeah,
No?
What she just said.
Raphael Sacamaro.
Yeah, it's Salamanca. That's Salamanca.
Yeah, he's this district.
This is, oh yeah, because he's up at he takes the point. Hunts Point, not Hunts Point.
Yeah, Salamanca is the point.
149. Okay, so Salamanca.
It's not this one, it's not Salamanca.
Yes.
It's Mario Crespo, Marcos Crespo.
Oh, it could
No,
be.
he's not.
Done. Oh,
We're
yeah.
gonna figure out who your council member is.
Ayala is into one.
So 149.
149.
And then it's Salamanca. Salamanca takes care.
Tent open over here with that turkey.
Yeah.
And that was the name on that tent.
Salamanca, so 10, yeah. And let's talk about turkeys for a second. Let's talk about turkeys. But let me talk to you guys about
She
turkeys.
ain't talking about that too.
Why do you think that they come to our communities to give us turkeys and backpacks every year? They want to vote. Why else? Because that's definitely the reason. They want you to see that name on that tent.
Yeah.
And they want you to be like, I need to vote for this man because he gave me a turkey.
Yeah.
But how much is a turkey? Let's say how much is like a normal sized turkey you guys gonna get for Thanksgiving? It's about $10,
$15.
$10, $15 now. This year it's supposed to be more.
Yeah.
And 3 days,
13, so let's go with 13, because that's a good solid number. Now, why is it that these elected officials think that we need them to give us a turkey? Now, every time that they do a turkey giveaway, and they do a backpack giveaway, you know what they're doing to our community? They're training us. training our thinking, and they want you to believe that they're doing their job because they're giving you a fucking turkey and a backpack. When in reality, their job is to actually create an environment where you are making more money, you have more opportunities, and you don't need a free fucking turkey. So every year, my mom will go around and she's like, oh, turkeys, free turkeys. And look, all these turkeys are coming, and I'm just like, if you don't calm the hell down with these turkeys. Because my mom, like, she will look up locations. And she will go out and get these turkeys and then go out and give it to other people. So I'm like, hey, we need one turkey. We're 4 people now. And she will go out and look for these turkeys. And I tell her every year, I'm like, the reason that they're giving you these turkeys is because they don't want your son to make more than $12,000 an hour. They are okay with your rent being more than 30% of your income. They want your kids to think that as a parent, you can't get them what they need, and that they need to depend on elected officials for something.
And this is why, from my view, that us as constituents in the areas that we live in, to make them be held accountable for the things that we need in our community.
That's exactly what you said.
That's exactly what we should be doing.
Me and my brother, I tell y'all, I love to run for city council, but I love to. No, no, what you're right.
What do you mean you
Me
can't?
and Tom, I'm happy right now because I told him, I said, listen, my residents are more than just turkey. I need money for programs, all this stuff.
Because remember, NYCHA is owned, so let's say the actual land is owned by Congress. The buildings are owned by Congress. But the way that housing authorities work all across America is that the city and the state also have a responsibility. So when I talk to my city council member, I'm like, hey, when are we gonna start doing more programming to develop businesses? Because I know 3 guys that are barbers in their apartment. I know 2 girls that do braids. I know someone else that does makeup. Why aren't they getting supported to create their own small business and make their money and buy their own fucking turkeys? Don't come at me with some turkeys. So I'm so, turkeys just get my blood boiling. And I like turkey, and I make a pretty good turkey, but it pisses me off every year that we're being told that we need to come out and get a free turkey. And then they go on TV and they show this line of black and brown women standing in line to get a $13 turkey. And you're online for 45 minutes because this school, instead of making sure that your kids and your grandkids have a better school, have better opportunity, have better programming, have better development, they're giving you a fucking turkey.
I would like to see more men programs in our community for our young men.
Yep.
We got too many guns on the street. I would like to search and see if your name is not on the lease in my damn apartment. I'm gonna search my apartment.
So this issue with the crime, right? When you guys look at the news every night and there's a shooting somewhere in New York City, have you noticed that it's always near a NYCHA project?
Yeah.
Do you know why that's the case? Because when they stop funding after school programming,
Go ahead, sister.
work development,
Yes, ma'am.
tutoring, training, and job corps, what were all our men supposed to go to?
Exactly. Rob and steal.
So when they come in my community and they're like, oh, you know what the problem is, we need more cops. Nah, bro.
Because right now,
you got PSA 7 up the block from you, and I know there's been shootings around Melrose in the last 2 months.
the most beautiful fields right now is plumbing, carpentry, maintenance. Now, I remember
And carpenters.
when I was in school, I took carpentry class. I took wood class.
Now, public housing, so on what she's saying, public housing, section 964, they give money for tenants to have programming. There's like $25 that each apartment is given for programming. NYCHA takes half of that. What are we supposed to create with $12.50?
Nothing.
And add on there the fact that marijuana was just legalized.
Absolutely.
And a ton of our boys have marijuana records. This is how the system becomes what it is. It's little by little, they eat away at our community. They put us in this situation. And then they come in and they're like, here's a turkey. Smile for the camera,
They take it.
right? So I'm not saying, if you need the turkey, take the turkey. If you wanna save $13, take the turkey. But do what your neighbor said. When you get to that front of the line, ask them questions. So I'm about to grab this turkey. Are you gonna push for a livable wage? Are you gonna make sure that housing in my community is affordable to people that make less than $30,000? Are you gonna make sure that the train station is getting cleaned? I was talking to a girl on the bus, she's my age, but we're talking and she's like, you know, I don't understand, I gotta take this bus every day, and I'm like, they don't care.
No,
The hub, 149th Street, that gets the second amount of people going through it every single day in the whole city. It's Times Square, number one,
Yeah.
and number two is the hub. Does the hub get the resources, the cleaning?
no.
Ask Salamanca. I'd be like, bro, why is it that the hub is the second busiest district in all of New York City, but it looks like shit?
Yeah.
And what are you doing to fix it? Because that's his job. His job is not to order 700 turkeys from Fresh Direct, who's also killing us with asthma and their trucks and all of the shit that they got going. His job is to make sure that our train stations are clean, that our trains are running, that the VX32 doesn't make me late for this meeting.
Yeah, that's another thing too, that, you know, the education part, educate, cause I'm big on, before I act like the black woman that I am, I'm gonna act like the white woman that I went to school.
I need to steal that.
Tell it, tell it.
I need to steal that.
I'm gonna do it the white way before I do it the black way. Tell it, when the bus come, if they do something wrong, take the number down.
Oh yeah, I tweeted.
Take
I
the number
immediately
down
sent a tweet out.
and make a complaint.
And I asked the bus driver when I got on, I said, what was your scheduled departure time?
That's such a.
Oh, it was 5:38.
Uh-huh.
It's 5:46.
I'm not
You
gonna
late.
argue with you.
I'm tweeting your boss.
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue with you.
And I'm not getting into arguments with you.
I'ma
What
put
time
some
are
in
you
your
scheduled
jacket.
to leave? Go
I'ma
ahead,
put
sister.
some in your jacket.
But
Well,
sometimes there's, supervisor, it goes to supervisor said,
Yeah.
Yeah, but if there's somebody over super.
But you know what? I bet you that if every single person that lives in those houses started calling the MTA, complaining about the BX32,
Facts,
you guys would have
facts.
advanced, I mean, you can probably have buses with couches in them. Because listen to how many people live here. And that's how we affect change. So let me give Cesar a chance.
I am in the land use committee, I'm in committee board 1, so 149th Street is in my committee board. So we, one big problem that we have is really agencies, they don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
So you have DOT talking about bike lanes, and then you have the MTA talking about the buses, and everybody's quarreling with each other because the bike users, they don't want parking, they don't want the parking to interrupt their lanes. So you have these issues there. So I mean, like I said, I'm in the land use committee, so I see all those developments happening. I've been there for 3.5 years. But one thing, it just really like this lack of communication between people in agencies. And then when you talk about, they say in the hub, you have certain entities like the business improvement district that only cares about the commercial area.
Yes.
So one thing that happened during the riots, there was the person with the community district.
That was on June 4th of last year. You guys remember that?
Remember that when they were preparing for the riots in the community district? After-
So there was I'll explain. So there was a march for Black Lives Matter.
Oh, okay.
And it was the first one that was done in the South Bronx. And they basically walked down from 149th Street to where Cesar lives at Millbrook Houses. When they got to Millbrook Houses, cops had prepared a response, like if they were killing people, right? It was trucks, it was buses. I was in my balcony watching because I had friends in the march, and they closed the Madison Avenue Bridge, they closed the 3rd Avenue Bridge, they brought helicopters in. And what they did was at the end of one block, the cops started pushing forward, And at the other end, they started pushing back. And then they beat all of those people. And that was June 4th of last year. And the bid, like Cesar has explained, that business improvement district, they were the ones that asked for that kind of response.
So the person said, was stating that you're gonna have all these people coming in, they're going to destroy the businesses there. So they prepare beforehand, so they told the cops to prepare to protect those areas.
Because what matters to them
So
is the business.
because they were saying like they're gonna have riots and things like, that's the words that they use, you know, they don't use protests.
And they always like to say those people.
Yeah.
It's our people.
Right, exactly.
Because who's at a Black Lives Matter event? There were a bunch of little white kids, because they're passionate about all types of stuff, and they'll come out. So a lot of white people got their asses kicked that day. And that was the worst March response we had in all New York City. So, and this is happening in our district, right? So should Salamanca be out here giving you turkeys?
No.
Or should he be encouraging a community center that's actually thriving and giving resources and supporting you?
That's what, like I said, they quit to come to the Black community when they want their vote. Yeah, but then once they get in office, they forget about you till they want you to do.
So how do we remind them that we're here, right? That public housing doesn't want to go private, and that we're not going to back down, right? Because we're taking on Congress. And Congress is the super easy opponent. Because the way that Congress works, I like to tell people, let's say that you call your congressman. So we call Richie Torres. Once you call, they assume 3 other people feel the same way that you do. And they're like, okay, well, if one person's calling about this, that means that this is important for like 300. So each of you can make a huge difference. So we have handouts that I'm gonna give you guys copies of. But your homework tonight is to sign the petition and put down your cell phone. Because on my phone, I actually have this small little deck of pictures that I'll text to each of you. You just gotta look at the picture and you can see all of the phone numbers, and then you call each person on that list. What are you gonna say to them, right? What we learned tonight. So you're gonna tell them, you know, I just went to this teaching on public housing, and I don't like the way that you're spending money. And I need you to start supporting public housing. The one thing I ask you to tell them, if you forget everything, tell them your name, where you live, because Richie is our congressperson. And then remember the tenant protection voucher, right? This is the biggest threat facing public housing all across America.
In other words, we don't want that.
We do not want this. So if all you remember is my name is Ramona, I live at Melrose Houses, I don't want you to give money to tenant protection vouchers, have a good day.
Okay.
Now, Congress, their offices are closed most of the time because of COVID. So it's gonna be even easier, right? Because you can call, you can go on, and you can talk whatever you want about them, their mama, their cousin, and the kids. And as long as you leave that voicemail, you've done your part, right? So that's the one thing. I'm gonna need you to sign the petition. I'm gonna start passing it around. And when I pass it around, make sure to put your number so that we have a number for you. If you have an email, you can put that. We like to send emails every week. So this is number 1. Number 2, I'm gonna give each of you 10 copies of the documents that we have, and then I'm gonna leave documents with Cassandra. Please knock on your neighbors' doors. I have neighbors that I do not like. I have neighbors that I pray for. Even that person, I knocked on his door one time and I said, look, this is what we're working on. And just give them the information. One thing I tell a lot of our seniors is invite your neighbors over for coffee. If you guys go out together, if you guys are all vaccinated, if you feel safe having them at your house or going to their house for a cup of coffee, show up and bring the flyers. Now, the most effective thing that we have is we have coloring pages. People love to color. This is brilliant. One of the volunteers that we have, Jack and Gabby, they came up with this. And it is the most successful way to talk to people about this issue. So you give them a coloring page. You know your neighbor has kids? Girl, let me give you some coloring pages. Your senior neighbors? Ma'am, let me give you some coloring pages. So this, if they say no to everything, they will say yes to a couple of things. So that's the second piece of homework, right? So far, we're calling Congress and the list of names that you're gonna get texted to you. 2, you're gonna actually talk to your neighbors and give them this information. 3, you're gonna keep copies of the petition. The petition is in English and Spanish. Everything that we make is in English, Spanish, Chinese, and French. If you need another language for this development, we can get it, and we'll make the copies for you. So take this around, and when your neighbors see that document, and they start learning through either the painting or through the flyers, ask them to sign the petition. What does the petition say? The petition says, we want Gregg Russ fired. Gregg Russ is the president of NYCHA. Now take a look at his history.
He came in after that, oh, we don't know this, right?
Yes, after Sholetta,
The full start.
oh, her too. Yeah, so she was the one that ended up coming to the court. So Gregg Russ, if you look at the little, on the right-hand side of the paper, you'll see the history of everything he's done across the United States. No, he loves to kill some public housing. Gregg Russ is a member of that big group that goes to Congress and tells Congress not to support public housing. Gregg Russ's father-in-law is the biggest private landlord in Minneapolis, where he's from. Gregg Russ, how much does Gregg Russ get paid? Cesar, I forgot.
400,000.
So he makes $400,000 a year, and he flies home to Minneapolis every weekend to see his family. We're paying for that. Do you know how many apartments I could paint with $400,000? I painted my whole apartment when I was $750. So we have to get rid of him. So I asked them that they need to fire Gregg Russ and that they need to stop the movement, right? So that is the teaching. I told Cassandra this goes by super fast. Everybody gets invested. I hope you guys had a good time tonight. Do you have any questions, concerns? Do you want to practice how to talk to your neighbors? Sometimes we do role playing. I can make believe that I'm a rude neighbor, and you can practice with me. We can do that. So if you've never done canvassing, right? This is scary, like going up to neighbors you don't really have a relationship with can be hard. So I like to role play, so we can have like someone come up and they can practice, or if you want to practice making a phone call, we can make a phone call together now. So how about we do the phone call, Cassandra? You come up and bring your phone. Come up and bring your phone, and we're gonna call Richie Torres' office.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes, you can.
No, people, when I go.
You, why you can't call?
How about this one talking about?
I like that DLC.
If you don't call his office. All right, let me pull up the number. And then for those of us on Zoom, I know we still have some folks here. Do you guys have any questions? Oh, I was on mute. For those of you that are on Zoom and listening in, do you guys have any questions that you want to ask while we practice the phone call that we're gonna do?
No, you covered it.
So I'll show you guys what what you're gonna get texted. So this is what we're gonna text you, right? And we're really lucky because we have a bunch of like college kids that are helping us. So they make all of these really cool graphics and videos. So we have this video. This is what you're gonna get texted. I'm gonna send it to you in pieces, so it's easier to read, and I'll send it to you as a video. And I made it with some hip hop music, because we're from the Bronx. And this is what it looks like. And then this is the page that has all the phone numbers. So when you get it, it'll be this on your screen. So let's do a phone call with Cassandra. Do you want to call Chuck Schumer?
Yeah.
All right, so let's dial his DC number. Will definitely be closed. So if you don't want to talk to a person, definitely call DC. but they'll check the message tomorrow, right? So let's practice with Chuck Schumer. His number is 202-224-6542. And let me get the script ready for you. And here's your script. So you can freestyle or you can use what's on there.
Yeah, you said black and white.
You can freestyle. You know what we're calling. All right, so when it answers, we'll be quiet so that she can do her magic. It's a long message.
Yes, good afternoon, my name is Sean Bolden. I reside at 220 East 156th Street. I'm a railroad resident, and I'm saying no to the blueprint and to the blueprint to change the proposal. Also, I'm saying fire Gregg Russ. Thank you so much and have a good night. Stay safe.
Nice. What went well with Cassandra's phone call?
You better say everything now.
Let's give her some positive feedback. What did she do well? Yes, she said, my name, this is where I live, I'm a NYCHA tenant. What else did she do well? She said that Gregg Russ needed to be fired. That's important because that's part of our petition. And then she said the blueprint. She said no to the blueprint. But we're calling Chuck Schumer, right? So Chuck Schumer is the one that's been promising us a ton of money. And it turns out that all that money is about to go to those TPV vouchers. So that's the one constructive criticism we're gonna have for Cassandra. And that it's three things, right? So it was a lot to remember. So when you sit down, you could write down, what are the things that I really wanna say in this message so I don't forget? Go ahead. Yeah.
I remember that. I remember my name, my address. And say Brian Gregg Russ.
Yeah. So see if anyone on Zoom has questions. If not, we're just gonna give out the handouts and we're done. No, yeah. So if you need to go, come up to the.
Is there anybody who had a question here in Zoom?
And I'll give you.
No,
a
y'all come.
packet.
I understood everything.
Hold on,
Oh, yeah.
hold on. Somebody's on Zoom. I can't hear.
What are they, what's their
This is
question?
Cruz. I understood everything. So Cassandra, they'll give me the flyers.
Okay, you want Cassandra to give you the flyer?
Yeah, 'cause I'm gonna be meeting with them tomorrow.
And Michelle, it's Michelle, right?
What happened?
I think Michelle.
Hey, what's up?
Michelle, she said you have a meeting with her tomorrow.
Yes, we have a meeting tomorrow. You hear me? Hello?
Hello?
So one second.
So what was the question?
Was it
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm saying, you asked a question?
No, I didn't need a question.
Oh, someone was asking me a question about the meeting tomorrow?
No, I'll talk to you later if I come up with anything.
Good. Do you have any questions for our guest tonight?
No, I don't have.
No.
Anyone? Okay,
Just
All
make
right,
sure you
have
get
a-
the paperwork from me, Cassandra.
I will do. You too, okay, Mr. Jenny Cruz?
Yeah.
For joining us on Zoom.
And thank you guys for joining us on Zoom, okay?
All right.
Okay,
And I hope to see both of you guys tomorrow in person, okay?
Yes.
yes,
Jenny Cruz, 5:30, Michelle, 6 o'clock, okay?
okay,
All right, you heard me, Jenny?
Yes, I got you, Cassandra.
All right, 5:30 for you, 6 o'clock for everybody else, okay?
All right. thank
okay.
you.
All right. Thank you guys again. Let me sign this piece of paper.
What's her name? Cedar?
Huh?
What's her name?
What you say, Jenny?
What's her name? The lady's name? Cedar?
Ramona.
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 The presenter is Ramona.
Ramona, okay.
My last name Ferreira. Like Ferrari.
You don't have a business card?
It's not
So,
Ferrari.
the safe section 9 business card,
Okay.
and that has our email, our Facebook.
I need it for my mother, I'll put my email address.
Okay, perfect. I know that the assignment teacher was that.
Okay,
Oh, yeah. And so you'll see the petition is in Spanish and English. It says the same exact thing, it's just when our printer made it, they made the mistake of making the English one smaller than the Spanish one. But it's the same exact stuff. And developed.
I'm gonna email that information.
Repeat again.
Are you gonna mail us that information that's on that screen?
She said you're gonna mail that information.
So Cassandra's gonna have extras of every single paper, and she'll be able to give it to the tenants that are on Zoom,
Okay,
okay?
and that's the information as well as that you have on the computer, the phone number?
Yes, yep. As long as I get everybody's phone number, I'll be able to text the screen that Cassandra used to make the phone calls tonight.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Thank you for being present.
No, thank you guys for having me. This is, I told
Okay.
Cassandra, she's like, you gonna do a class for an hour? I'm like, watch that hour fly by.
All right, thank you.
All for elections.
I got a full plate tomorrow.
I gotta go to court with one
I
of
got a
my
full
neighbors
plate.
tomorrow.
Good night.
Yeah, the folks on the Zoom, if you want to keep their number.
Jenny,
I can send
Jenny.
it real quick.
Jenny, is it okay for me to give you a phone?
And the face masks were actually donated to us by a company called Ford.
Yeah.
They wanted to help NYCHA tenants protect themselves during
Oh,
COVID.
that's
So those
what's
are
up.
given to us for free.
Is it okay if you give me your number, Michelle, too?
Joe is gone.
All right, cool.
All
All right. Jenny, what's your phone number? Michelle, what's your phone number?
Every day, give her my email.
Huh?
You have my email,
All
give her
right.
my,
Okay, I got you. That's what's up.
okay.
And I think we can start recording too. Yeah. So what did you guys think of the teaching?